Is the Alpinestars Supertech R7 actually better than a Shoei RF1400 or an Arai Contour X? On paper, Alpinestars is making big promises about MotoGP DNA at a street price, but I've seen enough game-changing helmets to be skeptical. Now, if you're looking for a new lid right now, the SR7 is probably at the top of your list. It's one of the most anticipated new helmets of the year, and for good reason. It looks like the $1,200 race-ready Superterch R7 worn by our MotoGP heroes, but it costs $679. Alpinestars claims it's the perfect bridge between the track and the street. But a perfect helmet doesn't matter if it gives you a headache when you slide your glasses in, or if the wind noise makes you want to pull over and cry. So Alpinestars has invited me out to put this helmet to the ultimate test. We're going to spend 2 days with this thing.
On the Aprilia 210 660, just a huge fan of this bike. And never ridden this track backwards. Doesn't that sound good? And you have to tell me, how do I sound using the Alpinestars proprietary intercom system? Awesome airflow. Hopefully it's not too loud for you. Aerodynamically, this helmet's pretty impressive. And the A-head thing on how you set it really allows you to customize where it sits, where I'm looking through the helmet. Really notice the optically correct visor. No distortion. I barely see the helmet even in my periphery vision. If I really try to see it out of the corner of my eye, I can barely see it, but that speaks to just how it kind of spooked me. I wasn't expecting it to be there. How great the viewport is on this. Can we just talk for a second about how spectacular this 210 is, this 210 660. What an amazing motorcycle. Like, how did they get this much power and torque and front and joy into 660 cc's? Well done, Aprilia. All right, back to talking about the helmet.
Now, it's obvious where this helmet came from. This is the Superterch R10's younger brother, and Alpinestars didn't just inspire the design, they used it as a blueprint. It uses the exact same visor as the flagship, giving you the same massive field of view that your heroes in MotoGP are using. If you want the pro look without the pro level debt, this seems to hit the mark. Now, ever since Danielle from Alpinestars came and did our podcast and told us how heavily they've invested in their own test facilities and helmet development, I've been really excited to spend some time with this helmet. They are clearly serious about the helmet game.
Now, a lot of my track-only helmets are uncomfortable to wear for very long. This helmet does not seem that way. That was really sloppy because I'm talking to you. And that's fast if you never go on the street. 120 miles an hour, indicated. Helmet was very stable. You know, they said the little winglets on the side helped reduce turbulence when you're looking at high speed. I don't know if it's in my head, but the helmet is remarkably unbothered. No, that's not the right word. It doesn't pull. You know, so many helmets, you turn your head to the side to check your blind spot or look through a corner and you can really feel it snap back on your head. This doesn't. No matter how I turn my head, it seems unaffected. That was the word I was looking for. Unaffected by turbulence and the wind going around it, which really makes it useful, effective. Makes it a good helmet. Let's just leave it at that.
Keeping up with the YouTube algorithm leads to not eating what I should and just grabbing whatever is fast, which is rarely what's actually good for performance. Now lately, I've been using Factor to stay on track. Factor takes the guesswork out of clean eating so I can stay focused on my goals without making bad dietary choices. Now, if you aren't familiar, Factor delivers fresh, never frozen, chef-crafted meals straight to your door. These are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. Now, I'm terrible in the kitchen, but Factor eliminates the stress of cooking, meal planning, and best of all, the cleanup. Now, 2 things that really stand out to me, besides how good this stuff tastes. First, the protein pack performance. Most meals deliver over 30 grams of complete protein, some up to 53 grams, which is essential for muscle recovery after a long day of riding. Second, the quality standards. These things, yes, they taste really good, but they're made without refined seed oils or artificial sweeteners. They banned a whole bunch of ingredients to focus on nutrient-dense foods. You get a smart balance of carbs, healthy fats, and at least 2 vegetables per meal. Plus, they offer plans like high protein, calorie smart, and low carb to fit whatever you're aiming for. So you really should try this for yourself. Head over to factor75.com, click on the link below or scan the QR code, and use coupon code CanyonChasersFB50, FB50, to get 50% off your first Factor box, plus free breakfast for a year. That's coupon code CanyonChasersFB50 at factor75.com to get 50% off, plus free breakfast for a year. Now, on the track, the Superterch R7 is a scalpel. The stability at triple digit speeds and that 220-degree field of view made hitting apexes effortless by slicing through the wind. But most of us don't live at this circuit. So to see if this focused DNA actually holds up when you're not tucked behind a bubble or kissing the mirror, we're heading out on this amazing misty Southern California morning to chase down some canyons. We're swapping the rumble strips of the track for the unpredictable tarmac of what I assume will be Angeles Crest and Mulholland. So let's see how the SR7 handles the real world. So yeah, let's go for a ride.
It's one thing when you're testing a product in perfect conditions, right? Perfect California racetrack, perfect California roads with perfect asphalt, perfect temperatures. Alpinestars is buying me lunch and letting me ride their motorcycles. It's easy to get wooed, right? It's more important to test a product how it works in the real world. It doesn't matter how good a helmet looks, it matters its function, right? Its primary purpose is it's a crash helmet, it's safety gear. You know, I get a little frustrated that we have all this new research coming out on concussions and traumatic brain injuries. A lot of helmets are sticking with the status quo. They just keep making the helmets the same way they've always made them, where put some styrofoam in a stiff shell and call it a day. So I'm unabashedly excited about any manufacturer, any helmet company that is working on making a helmet safer. And I'm afraid that might be my bias, that Alpinestars is really pushing that status quo, and I want to be careful. So that's why I came home. I've been riding the helmet around for a few days, so I can give you a really honest final verdict. All right, let's see if I can find someplace reasonably pretty in this bitter cold spring afternoon to spend some more time talking about this helmet.
All right, so first let's talk about the bright orange triangles on the side. Some folks on our Patreon have said that it looks like some Fisher-Price plasticky gimmick, but it's actually a perfect example of racing benefiting us street riders. Most of us assume a broken collarbone is a part of landing on your shoulder, but Alpinestars data revealed sometimes there's a different culprit. The helmet itself, during a tumble, the lower ridge of the helmet sometimes acts like a hammer slamming directly into the collarbone. So to fix this, Alpinestars carved this dedicated collarbone recess into the shell and integrated nucleon plasma inserts. It's the same material in the spine protector in the Tech R5 plasma airbag. And this creates a soft landing zone that reduces the risk of the helmet breaking your collarbone. Something else worth mentioning about the orange triangles as it pertains to fit. When you pull the helmet on, they cradle your lower jaw, making the helmet feel really secure. It's a pretty comforting feeling. But if they're cold, they're less pliable. And I mention this because I had a hard time putting the helmet on for the first time because it was a really chilly morning. Next is the shell. Now, a lot of times we just want to assume it's a hard bucket, right? But what's actually happening under the paint is the difference between a good helmet and a great one. And when we look at the layup on the SR7, we see a multi-layer composite. But what does that actually mean for the way you ride? On the cheap end, you have thermoplastic. It's basically injected molded plastic. It's tough and it's inexpensive, but it's heavy. and manufacturers have to make the shell fairly thick to pass safety tests. That extra weight on your neck all day is the budget tax you're paying when you buy a more affordable helmet. Now, when you look at this cross section, this is a sandwich of materials. You've got fiberglass to spread the impact, unidirectional carbon for rigidity without the weight, and aramid or nylon, basically Kevlar, to make sure nothing pierces the shell. So for us mere mortals traveling at more sane speeds, a slightly softer shell is often the better choice. The SR7 layup can actually flex more easily upon impact. It starts soaking up energy and slowing things down right off the bat. And we can see the results of that energy management in the data. If we look at the impact test comparison for the SR7, on the left we have linear acceleration. That's the straight on hit. The SR7 is performing 50% better than the standard threshold. And it's because that shell is designed to flex and crush slightly. It's slowing your head down rather effectively. But the real magic is on the right, oblique or rotational acceleration. This is what happens when your helmet hits the pavement at an angle and wants to twist or rotate. The SR7 is coming in at 80% below that threshold. So it's not just about being hard enough to stay in one piece, it's about being soft enough to act as a cushion for your brain. If you have ever spent a long day on the interstate stuck behind a semi-truck, you know the bobblehead effect. It's that frantic high-frequency vibration that can sometimes make your vision blurry, and it leaves your neck feeling like you just went 12 rounds with a boxer. Dirty air is a rider's worst enemy, but the SR7 seems to have negotiated a peace treaty with the atmosphere. Even in the chaotic wake of a tractor trailer, this helmet stays eerily still. And I'm not being dramatic when I say it's one of the most stable helmets I have ever had. And it was the same thing on the track. When turning my head, entering triple-digit speed corners, the helmet stayed stable. Now, I had Brian from the podcast look at the data, and he helped me explain why. Alpinestars seems to treat the air inside the helmet as a functional part of the aerodynamics, and he explained it like this. When you move through the air, you create vacuum behind your head that wants to pull and tug at the helmet. Now, this helmet has these rear exhaust vents that are strategically dumping air into that high pressure directly behind that low pressure void. It's basically closing the door on the wake. It's effectively using the venting of the helmet to turn it into more of a teardrop shape, kind of like those time trial helmets from bicycle racing. By filling this hole with the air that just cooled your noggin, the helmet keeps airflow smooth, prevents buffeting, and helps you stay cool.
And speaking of ventilation, no helmet I have ever worn in my entire life moves as much air as this one. On most helmets, I couldn't even tell you if the vents are open or closed. But while riding in California in temperatures in the 80s, I kept closing the vent because I got cold. And riding today with temperatures in the 40s, it's extremely cold. It stays closed.
And then you have these little ridges on the side of the visor, and they call them turbulators, and they sound like a prop from an 80s science fiction movie, right? But their job is to create a tiny bit of controlled chaos right at the front of the helmet. They trip the air up so it sticks to the helmet longer instead of detaching early. And the result is, again, less turbulence, but according to the engineers that we spoke with, these little guys help keep the helmet quiet.
I'm not kidding. This has to be one of the quietest helmets I've ridden in. No whistles, minimal roar, and if you run the included chin curtain, it tends to keep things even quieter. I suspect the aero combined with how the padding wraps around your jaw is keeping a lot of the noise at bay.
Now add in these lateral winglets, which look neat, but they keep the helmet from hunting from side to side, so you get a ride that's strangely quiet and smooth. It's the difference between fighting the wind and just existing within it. It's the kind of engineering that you don't really notice until you realize that you've been riding for 6 hours and your neck isn't tired, or until you go back to your older helmet that doesn't have all these little aero features. All right, so let's breeze through the rest of the spec sheet because we've got miles to cover. So starting with the visor, it's beefy, it's thick, and some reviewers have called the chin latch a little bit fidgety, but coming from decades on the track, I like how substantial it feels. I mean, when this thing clicks closed, it stays clicked, and it seals the visor against the gasket like a vault door. And frankly, if you're worried about it being fiddly, you're gonna have the muscle memory down by your second gas stop. I mean, if you own the helmet, you're gonna know how to work it. Plus, in an impact, the last thing I want is my visor deciding to go its own way. And then there's the A-Connect. That's a Alpinestars integrated helmet comm system that was built in partnership with Senna. It does have Harman Kardon speakers, Mesh 3.0 technology with dual core architecture. So it has AI voice canceling stuff. It will talk with other comm brands. That's an important detail. I mean, it's legit a good system. I mean, helmet comms have become a staple, and legitimately, it made this press ride one of the most hilariously fun press rides I have ever done because we were all connected. There was so much laughing, as well as letting each other know about road hazards and upcoming navigational changes, coordinating following the camera car, all without any weird hand signals trying to figure out what's going on. And the best part is that it's completely integrated. There's dedicated pockets in the helmet for the wires and the mic and the speakers, and the unit itself is up here at the back of the helmet. It was the easiest installation I've ever seen. And if you're worried about the tech becoming obsolete, look, you should be replacing your helmet every 5 years anyway. And I have comm systems from 10 years ago that still work fine. The helmet will likely retire before the Bluetooth does. Now for fit. I am an intermediate oval head, and this helmet's great. It has a soft touch liner that's just lovely. It comes standard with a slightly thicker cheek pad than most other brands, and for me, that is a huge deal because I'm always having to buy a helmet and then buy a dark visor and then buy thicker cheek pads, which leads us into the real price of this helmet. The solid color is $679.95. A-Connect, which isn't quite released yet. I believe it's going to be $549.95. It's not expected until about April 2026. Cheek pads are $129.95, but I don't need an extra pair. And a smoke visor is $119.95. And they're planning on releasing a whole bunch of different visor colors over the course of the summer.
Now, with any product review, I feel compelled to find something about the helmet to criticize. A perfect product doesn't exist. I do wish it came with a dark smoke visor. Every helmet should come with both. I do love the thicker cheek pads, but you have to be mindful taking the helmet on and off that you don't release the snaps that hold them in place. And lastly is A-Connect. While I love that it's integrated, the cost is the buttons are harder to find with gloves while riding. Now, you may or may not opt for A-Connect, and I'll probably do a whole video in the future comparing this to a more traditional Cardo.
All right, so at the end of the day, a helmet is arguably the most important piece of gear you can own. I mean, I take my own protection very seriously. I don't mind spending serious money on safety gear that works. So the million-dollar question, would I actually buy one? Well, the answer, it's a resounding yes. I am genuinely impressed with what Alpinestars has done here. From the way the internal venting stabilizes the aero, adjustable fit, and anti-rotation protection with the A-head, to the seamless integration of A-Connect, they're really bringing their A-game. But in all seriousness, you're going to see me wearing this SR7 a lot in future videos. Now, if you want to dive deeper into the specs or pick one up for yourself, I have links to Alpinestars in the description, along with an affiliate link for Revzilla. Now to be clear, Alpinestars did not sponsor this video or pay for my opinion, but using those Revzilla links helps keep the lights on without costing you a dime extra, and come on, Revzilla is awesome. But the SR7 has earned its spot in my gear closet. It comes in at a mid-tier price, but I feel like you're getting a premium product with engineering that actually changes the quality of the ride. I feel like it really punches above its weight. Thanks for hanging out and nerding out on fluid dynamics with me today. Go out, find some twisty pavement, and remember, smooth is fast, but seeing where you're going is even better. Thanks so much for watching. Ride on and ride well.